Hello everyone, and welcome back to this Delta Module 1 video series, where we're continuing our analytical journey through Paper 1 Task 5 by examining noun phrases, single nouns, affixes, and compounds. These cover Lexis, a language system closely related to morphology, which is how noun or other word constituents combine together to create new or different shades of meaning in a process called affixation. Nouns can then take modifiers before or after to create longer noun phrases, and together with other parts of speech can also combine together to create compound nouns, adjectives, and verbs. Let's get stuck in. As a quick recap of Paper 1 Task 5, you're provided with an authentic written text of a specific genre. In this case, from the June 2017 exam, we have a reminder letter for the renewal of a subscription. Riveting stuff. And in the task rubric itself, excluding genre and phonology, which are covered in other videos, you're required to analyze specific language items within the text in terms of their form and use. Form being what part of speech the language item is, what form it takes, what the constituents are, and what part of a larger structure it comprises. Use refers to how and why it is used in its immediate linguistic environment or within the larger context of the text. If we look at part C here and blow it up, look at the following extracts from the text, comment on the form and use of the nouns in bold as they are used in the text. Renewal, depth, classroom, read, and shop price. An example of another genre, this one from the June 2016 exam, is a recipe from a recipe book. And again, if we look closer at part C, comment on the form and use of the compounds in bold in each of the extracts below. Full fat, heavy based, saucepan, egg yolk, ice cream. And if we look back at the various language points analysed in Task 5 throughout the years, we can see compounds coming up here in June 2023, compounds again in December 2019, single word nouns in the exam before it, and in every Task 5, each of the four main language systems will be represented. Features of connected speech for phonology, cohesive words or articles for discourse, verb phrases and ing forms for grammar, and nouns for Lexis. However, we can also see noun phrases. Here it's just the form of noun phrases. And we can also see the form in use of suffixes here in the June 2022 exam, all of which also relate to Lexis. Compounds are popular by the Delta exam writers because they can cover two systems at once, grammar and Lexis. And they may also indeed cross over with nouns and noun phrases, as we'll see shortly. So if we go back to part C from June 2017, comment on form and use of the nouns in bold. And you'll notice that these aren't really basic nouns like year, but rather there's always something more going on, either regarding their form or use. If I modify this question slightly, we end up with comment on the form, not use, just the form of the noun phrases in bold. Your renewal instructions, unrivaled depth of information, career and classroom advice, an informed and entertaining read, the annual shop price. So here you can see there's a lot more going on with the structure because it's an entire noun phrase and therefore we're just being asked to comment on the form. And we can reword this again slightly to comment on the form and use of the affixes in the words in bold. So each of these words here contains one or more affixes, either as prefixes or suffixes. Now let's look at each of these language items in turn to see how we can go about analysing them. Starting with nouns and looking at points relating to form. First off, note whether it's a compound or a proper noun. Watching all of these videos should provide you with a wealth of knowledge to tackle the exam. Now, wealth is neither a compound noun nor a proper noun. It is a common noun. Proper nouns are specific names of people, places, etc., as opposed to common nouns, which refer to general things. And noting common noun here probably wouldn't get the mark, as it's likely to be considered too obvious. If you're finding them useful, a subscription to the channel would be much appreciated. How did that shameless plug creep in? Again, subscription neither nor. They are mainly designed for people who prefer self-study. However, others feel that studying in a more interactive classroom environment is more beneficial. So now we have our compound noun made up of two words, class and room. About 60% of examinees achieved a pass or higher in the last exam. Good to know. They probably read a lot of Thornbury's books. Thornbury is a specific name, Scott Thornbury, the renowned ELT guru. And so we should note that here. Hopefully, you'll be among the 60% in the next exam. The staff from Cambridge will let you know either way. Staff is a common noun. If not, don't feel too much disappointment. It's not an easy exam, and there's always next time. Disappointment is also a common noun. And you might think that subscription or disappointment is a compound noun. Disappointment. However, dis and ment are affixes connecting to the word stem appoint. Whereas in compounds like classroom, each word is distinct and has a different root. Now, if a compound noun, as in the case of classroom, identify the constituents. In this case, noun plus noun, and it's a good idea to put what that noun is in brackets, class plus room. Staying with compound nouns, note how those constituents are connected, and in this case they are unhyphenated. Now, the next main point is note the countability, and this is for all nouns. Wealth in this context is countable. Normally wealth is uncountable when it refers to money, as in I don't have much wealth. However, here it's referring to an abundance of something, therefore countable. Indefinite articles like a or un are a giveaway if you're not sure. Subscription, countable. People, countable. Even though people doesn't have an indefinite article or a plural s, it's still countable as people is the irregular plural form of person. Now, classroom here is an attributive noun. More on this shortly. And so they aren't subject to countability in the same way that these other nouns are, and so don't need to be commented on. For example, you can't pluralize classroom because there's a modifier to the head of the noun phrase environment. Environment we could pluralize, however. More interactive classroom environments. Examinees is countable. Thornberrys is countable. Proper nouns can be countable if they refer to names, for example, but also uncountable if they refer to, for example, languages, like English. We can't say Englishes. Staff is uncountable. We need a classifying noun to make it countable, like a member of staff. And disappointment is also uncountable. Much is the clue here if you weren't sure. After countability, note the number. Wealth is singular. Subscription, singular. People, plural. Classroom again doesn't apply here because it's an attributive noun. Examinees, plural. Thornberrys, singular. And I could pluralize this by asking a question like, have you met the Thornberrys yet? The Thornberrys. That would be the plural form of the proper noun Thornberry, referring to members of the family collectively. Staff is plural, and uncountable nouns can also be plural if referring to a group, aka group nouns or collective nouns. Whereas disappointment is singular, it's not a group noun, but rather a mass noun. If you have a noun in the plural form, you should note the regularity of that. People is irregular, and here we're referring to the regularity of the plural form as shown. It doesn't apply to the base form of the noun. For example, you can't say person is an irregular noun, but rather it has the more common irregular plural form, people, and the more formal regular plural form, persons. Regular meaning it takes the suffix s or es. In the case of examinees, the suffix s, not es, is conferring plurality. And staff is also an irregular plural because it doesn't take the s or es suffix. If it's a regular plural noun, then you should note the spelling change. Base form examinee plus s suffix. And then we want to comment on the derivation of the noun. Nouns can be derived from verbs, as in teach, teacher, adjectives, wide, width, or other nouns like village, villager. Wealth does not have a derivation. Subscription is derived from the verb subscribe. Examinees is derived from the verb examine. And disappointment is derived from the verb disappoint. And lastly, for form, we want to comment on the affixation with respect to the stem. Now, before we run through this, we need to disambiguate word stem from word root, because although they can be used interchangeably, this is not always the case. So, considering our plant here, we have this one root that then forms the stem, after which we have these offshoots, which we can consider the affixes. So, a word root is the most basic part of a word containing its core meaning. It cannot be broken down into meaningful parts, and it's not always able to stand alone as a word. However, if it is a standalone word, it can be affixed. Book, as in the noun, just has one root, and so can be considered the word root. The etymology of the word root comes back to this, which I won't try and pronounce, but I believe it's from Old English and means beech tree. Presumably they used to write on the bark of beech trees. The word root, book, can be affixed to give us books or bookish. Now we have two roots, bio and logy, to give us biology. Bio meaning life, logy meaning study of. And we can see that in other similar words like geology, geo meaning earth. However, these are bound morphemes, unlike book, and therefore cannot be affixed as they are. Now in Delta, we're not expected to be etymologists. We're just looking at how words are formed with respect to the stem. So we'll be referring to stem from here on out, though likely your point would still be considered valid if you wrote root instead. So a word stem, this part of our plant, comprises one or more roots. They can be broken down into meaningful parts. They're always able to stand alone as words and can be affixed. So biology is a word stem. It can be broken down into two roots, biology, and it can be affixed as in biological or biologically. Book is a word stem, however, it cannot be broken down into further roots. It only has one. And it can be affixed as in bookish to give us the adjective. That little digression out the way, let's comment on the affixation with respect to the stem. So in subscription, the stem is script, the prefix sub, and the suffix ion. Now this noun suffix is usually tion, but because the stem ends in a t, we don't repeat this in the suffix. Examinees, stem, examine, plus suffix e plus suffix s. So this has two suffixes, e and s, and the first would usually be double e to indicate the person who is the recipient of the object or action, for example, trainee. But because the stem, examine, ends in an e, there is only one. Disappointment, stem, appoint, plus prefix dis plus suffix ment. Now let's move on to use and note whether it's being used as the subject or object. And you might have noticed that none of the nouns highlighted below are directly being used as the subject or object, but rather they are part of a larger noun phrase which acts as the subject or object. About 60% of examinees, this whole noun phrase is the subject. People who prefer self-study, this whole noun phrase is the object. If we modify this slightly, however, we get examinees and self-studiers. Self-studiers being the object, examinees being the subject. Next, comment on its use as the head of a noun phrase. Now, when dealing with nouns or noun phrases, it's a good idea to underline the whole phrase or highlight it in some way so you can clearly see where the head and modifiers lie with respect to each other within the noun phrase. Wealth is head of the noun phrase, a wealth of knowledge, and you should write the whole noun phrase in your point to be clear. Subscription is head of the noun phrase, a subscription to the channel. To the channel is a prepositional phrase which is acting as a post modifier. People is head of the noun phrase, people who prefer self-study. Who prefers self-study is a relative clause but also acting as a post modifier. Classroom is not the head, but rather a pre-modifier to the head environment. And we know this because we can remove classroom, as in a more interactive environment. However, if we removed environment, a more interactive classroom, grammatically it's still correct, but now classroom would be the new head, and therefore the whole phrase would have a subtly different meaning. 60% is the head, not examinees. Here, books is the head. Staff is head of the noun phrase, the staff from Cambridge. And disappointment is the head of the noun phrase, too much disappointment. Now, if it's not the head of the noun phrase, likely it's going to be an attributive noun. These are also known as noun adjuncts or noun modifiers, and they are essentially nouns that pre-modify other nouns, thereby functioning like an adjective. So, as we said before, classroom is an attributive noun, and it pre-modifies the noun environment. And there are two valid points to be made here. And lastly, for use, note if it's being used as part of a collocation or fixed expression. A wealth of knowledge is a fixed expression, and wealth is part of that. Part of fixed expression, a wealth of knowledge. Classroom environment, part of collocation, classroom environment. These two words appear together more often than chance would otherwise suggest, and therefore they are collocates. It might not be the strongest collocation, but it's stronger than classroom situation, for example, and so may or may not get the mark. A wealth of knowledge, on the other hand, has become such a strong collocation that it could be considered a fixed expression. Let's go back to our Part C from the June 2017 exam and go through a full answer relating to form and use. Starting with renewal. It's derived from the verb renew. Stem new plus prefix re plus suffix al. It's being used as an attributive noun as it pre-modifies the noun instructions. Depth. Form. Singular and uncountable. There is no article before this noun phrase, therefore it must be uncountable. And you don't need to repeat the word noun, like singular noun, uncountable noun, because this has already been made clear in the rubric. Depth is derived from the adjective deep, stem deep minus e plus suffix th, and it is the head of the noun phrase, unrivaled depth of information. Unrivaled is the pre-modifier, of information is the post-modifier. And we could potentially say this is part of the collocation, depth of information, because these two words, depth and information, collocate relatively strongly. Classroom, we have our compound noun, noun class plus noun room. It's unhyphenated. It's an attributive noun, which is pre-modifying the noun advice. Read is countable, singular, and derived from the verb to read. We know it's singular and countable because of the indefinite article here. And it's being used as the head of the noun phrase, an informed and entertaining read. Shop price is also a compound noun, also comprises two nouns, shop and price. However, in this case, they are separate words. Countable, we can say the annual shop prices. And for use, we can say it's the head of the noun phrase, the annual shop price. Now, let's move on from nouns to noun phrases. Comment on the form of the noun phrases in bold, your renewal instructions, etc., etc. And just to clarify a bit more about the structure of noun phrases, which we've already touched on, a noun phrase is a term used to describe a part of a sentence that consists of a pronoun or a noun and any other words placed before or after which modify it. The new course at Cambridge was great. All noun phrases have an obligatory head. This is usually a noun, but could also be a pronoun, as in the case here. Course. Pre-modifiers can be determiners, like articles, the, demonstratives, this. They can be adjectives, new, attributive nouns, business, or possessive nouns, as in Tom's. Post-modifiers, on the other hand, are either prepositional phrases at Cambridge. Prepositional phrases always start with a preposition. Or post-modifiers can be relative clauses, which my friends studied. So the head is obligatory. English, this is a noun phrase consisting of one word. And then the pre-modifiers and post-modifiers are optional. So here we're just looking at the form of the noun phrases in bold. I've highlighted the head just for clarity. Identify the head and its number/countability. Head, singular countable noun, wealth. Head, singular countable noun, subscription. And as we go through each one, you can see the head being highlighted and then analyzed. Then we want to identify the pre-modifiers. Here it is the indefinite article a, as is with the next one, a subscription. No pre-modifiers for people because it's plural. A more interactive classroom environment, this has a number of pre-modifiers, so it's a good idea to list these. Indefinite article a, comparative adjective, more interactive, attributive noun, classroom. And note that these pre-modifiers a, more interactive, and classroom all directly modify the head. They don't modify each other. Here we have a slightly different pre-modifier, which is an adverb of degree, about. A lot of Thornbury's books, quantifier, a lot of, possessive noun, Thornbury's. The staff from Cambridge has the definite article the as a pre-modifier, and too much disappointment has the adverb of degree, to, and the quantifier, much. As you've probably guessed, it now makes sense to identify the post-modifiers. A wealth of knowledge, post-modifier, prepositional phrase of knowledge. To tackle the exam is not an additional modifier, but rather an infinitive of purpose, which introduces an additional full infinitive clause. To the channel, prepositional phrase. Who prefers self-study, relative clause. Environment, doesn't have one. Of examinees, prepositional phrase. Books, doesn't have a post modifier. And from Cambridge is a prepositional phrase. And we can further break down these phrases or clauses into their constituents to finish the analysis of form. Identify the constituents of the post modifiers. Preposition of plus noun knowledge. Preposition to, definite article the, noun channel. Now, you probably don't need to go into depth here about the number or countability of the nouns within the prepositional phrase, since you aren't being asked to analyze these specifically. Who prefer self-study? This relative clause comprises the relative pronoun who, verb prefer, and compound noun self-study. Preposition of plus noun examinees. And preposition from plus noun Cambridge. Let's take our modified noun phrases from the exam question and put them through our analysis of form. Your renewal instructions, the head is the plural countable noun instructions. The pre-modifiers are the possessive adjective, aka possessive determiner, your, and the attributive noun, renewal. Unrivaled depth of information. Head is the singular uncountable noun, depth. We have the pre-modifier, unrivaled, and the post-modifier as the prepositional phrase of information. Said phrase is composed of the preposition of and the noun information. Career and classroom advice. The head is the singular uncountable noun advice, and the pre-modifier is this whole noun phrase, which is an attributive noun phrase, career and classroom. Breaking that down, we have the noun career, the coordinating conjunction and a compound noun classroom. Uninformed and entertaining read. The head is the singular countable noun read, and this time we have our indefinite article un, and then we have an adjective phrase, informed and entertaining. And this is the adjective informed, the coordinating conjunction and the adjective entertaining. The annual shop price. The head is the singular countable compound noun, shop price. And we have two pre-modifiers, the definite article the and the adjective annual. Nouns and noun phrases done. Now let's dig a little bit deeper into affixes. Comment on form and use of the affixes in the words in bold. So they probably won't highlight the affixes for you. You need to identify them yourself. And affixes are bound morphemes, morphemes being the smallest unit of meaningful language, and bound meaning that they cannot exist by themselves, but must attach themselves to the stem of the word or another morpheme. In English, we only have two kinds of affixes, prefixes and suffixes. And this process of attaching affixes is called affixation, the morphological process of adding a bound morpheme to the stem of a word either at the beginning or the end. Unlikely. Let's start with the form of affixes, comment on the type of affix and the stem or morpheme it attaches to. Now, if you get a question on affixes, likely there will be quite a few to analyze, since there is only really one point to make about form and one for use. In watching, we can say the suffix ing added to the stem watch. Useful, suffix ful added to stem use. Design, ed. Studying, ing. Examinees, we noted before, has two suffixes. So suffix e added to the stem examine, and then suffix s added to the bound morpheme e. This second suffix isn't binding directly to the stem, but rather to this first suffix. Thornberries, we have the suffix apostrophe s added to the stem Thornbury. Hopefully has two suffixes. Suffix ful added to stem hope. That suffix ful is a bound morpheme to which the suffix ly is added. In disappointment, we have both a prefix and a suffix. Prefix dis added to stem appoint, and suffix ment added to the stem appoint. That's our point to make about form, and for use, comment on how the affix imparts additional meaning to the stem. So affixes, as we said, are bound morphemes, and bound morphemes are the smallest meaningful unit of language. So how does it impart that meaning? In watching, the ing is used to form the present participle watching. It's not a gerund because it takes the object all of these videos, and so is functioning as a verb and cannot be replaced by a noun. Ful used to form the adjective useful. Ed used to form the past participle designed. This is a past participle because it's a passive construction. Ing used to form the present participle studying. The e is used to form the noun examinee. and the S is used to pluralize that noun. The apostrophe S is used to form the possessive noun, Thornberrys. FUL used to form the adjective hopeful, the LY used to form the adverb of manner, hopefully. Dis is a negative prefix used to negate the verb stem appoint, disappoint. And ment is used to form the noun disappointment. Putting this into practice with our exam question, renewal, prefix re added to the stem new. This gives you the base verb renew, to which the suffix al is added. And re is used to indicate repetition. Al is used to form the noun renewal. Instructions, suffix ion added to the stem instruct. This gives you the base noun instruction, to which the suffix s is added. Ion used to form the noun instruction, and s used to pluralize that noun. Unrivaled. We have the prefix un added to the stem rival. The suffix ed added to the base verb unrival. Doubling of consonant l, as there is only one l in unrival. Un is another negative prefix, and ed is used to form the adjective unrivaled, aka a participle adjective. Information, our suffix now is ation added to the verb stem inform, and this is just a suffix to form nouns. Entertaining, suffix ing added to the verb stem entertain, and again it's used to form the participle adjective entertaining. And now let's move on to compounds. So at the beginning we had this exam question. Comment on the form and use of the compounds in bold in each of the extracts below. A compound word is a word that's made up of two or more words to create a new meaning. They can be separate words or single words, hyphenated or unhyphenated. A black board could be considered a board, which is black, but by compounding the two words black and board, it creates the new meaning of a reusable slate writing surface on which writing or drawings are made with chalk. Blackboard is a compound noun, semi-skimmed is a compound adjective, as in semi-skimmed milk, and fast track is a compound verb, as in to speed up or move quickly through. Compounds can contain more than two words, as in mother-in-law, jack of all trades. By far and away, however, the most common compound contains two words. Full fat, heavy based, saucepan, egg yolk, ice cream. Let's look at some study advice here. Though using a powerful search engine like Google is no doubt useful for looking up language items you are less familiar with, chatbots seem to be the wave of the future. Let's start by identifying the type of compound. Search engine is a compound noun, as is chatbot. For example, ChatGPT, which can really kickstart your longer-term studies. Kickstart is a compound verb, longer-term studies is a compound adjective. And you don't need to provide your credit card number for this service, it's free. Credit card, compound noun. However, AI doesn't always get everything right, and you should always take the grammar book approach if not entirely convinced. Grammar book, compound noun. Sage advice all, especially when you put long, complex sentences into ChatGPT and ask it to analyze it from different angles, like phrases, clauses, parts of speech. It has been known to contradict itself, at least in my experience. And to check if the compound is an adjective, you can use it in the phrase it is. For example, it is longer term. That's grammatically correct, adjective. It is credit card. That's ungrammatical. It needs to be it is a credit card, therefore compound noun. Next up, identify the constituents. Search engine, verb, noun. And both constituents won't always be the same parts of speech as the compound, but at least one will be. Chatbot, verb, noun. Kickstart, verb, verb. Longer term, adjective, noun. Credit card, verb, noun. Grammar book, noun, noun. From there, note how the constituents are connected. Search engine, separate words. Chatbot, unhyphenated. Kickstart, unhyphenated. Longer term, hyphenated. Credit card, separate words. Grammar book, separate words. For compound nouns specifically, note the number, countability, and any spelling changes. Search engine is singular and countable. Chatbots is plural and countable. We have the base form chatbot plus the s suffix, and that creates a regular plural. Credit card and grammar book are both being used as attributive nouns, and as we saw earlier in the video, these do not need to be commented on. We can pluralize number, as in your credit card numbers, because it's the head of the noun phrase, but we can't pluralize credit card, your credit card's number. For compound adjectives, note the form and spelling changes. Long is in the comparative form, which is the base form long plus the er suffix. For compound verbs, note the form of the verb. It's in the bare infinitive, as it follows the modal can, and therefore non-finite. Essentially, this would then follow the analytical line for all verb phrases, which you can see in this video here. Moving on to use. For compound adjectives, note what it pre-modifies. Longer term pre-modifies the noun studies. And make sure you specifically write the part of speech or phrase that is being modified, otherwise no mark will be given. For compound nouns, note if it's being used as the subject or the object. Chatbots is the subject of the sentence. Chatbots seem to be the wave of the future. Search engine isn't the subject here, but rather the whole present participle clause using a powerful search engine like Google is the subject of a larger clause. Similarly, the noun phrases your credit card number and the grammar book approach both act as objects as opposed to the individual compound nouns. Again, with compound nouns, note if it's being used as the head of a noun phrase. Search engine is the head of the noun phrase, a powerful search engine like Google. If not the head, then note if it's being used as an attributive noun, as in the case with credit card and grammar book. And for attributive nouns, note what it pre-modifies. Pre-modifies the noun number, pre-modifies the noun approach. For compound verbs, you'll want to note whether it's transitive or intransitive. Kickstart takes the direct object, your longer term studies, and therefore transitive. Again, there may be more to analyze here if the compound verb is, for example, being used as a participle or in the passive or part of a collocation or fixed expression like kickstart a campaign. But those analytical lines are covered in depth in the How to Analyze Verb Phrases videos. Now let's look at a full answer relating to form and use of compounds from the June 2016 exam. Full fat milk is compound adjective, adjective full plus fat noun. It's not the adjective fat because it's referring to the content or amount of fat in the milk, therefore a noun. Hyphenated, and it pre-modifies the noun milk. Heavy base saucepan, again compound adjective, this time adjective plus adjective. Based is an adjective in the sense that a based saucepan would be a saucepan with a base, though it's more commonly found in compound adjectives because if it isn't a based saucepan, then what even is it? Base form base plus d suffix. The compound is hyphenated and it pre-modifies the compound noun saucepan. Bottom of the saucepan, compound noun, noun sauce plus noun pan. Unhyphenated, it's singular and countable. Now, of the saucepan is the post modifier to the head of the noun phrase bottom. And this post modifier is in the form of a prepositional phrase. So we could perhaps say part of prepositional phrase which post modifies the noun bottom. Egg yolk mixture. This is a compound noun, noun egg plus noun yolk, separate words. It's being used as an attributive noun which pre-modifies the noun mixture. And ice cream shares the same analysis as egg yolk. Compound noun, noun plus noun, separate words. Attributive noun, this time pre-modifying the noun base. And that concludes our analysis of nouns, noun phrases, and compounds, which largely covers the language system of Lexis. Be sure to watch the other videos in the Paper 1 Task 5 playlist, where we leave no stone unturned in what else they can throw at you, be it grammatical, phonological, or related to discourse. See you then.